I love that. I just love that tune, man. You know, listen, we're here on this journey. I've been talking about it for a bunch of episodes now. Hashtag ending the stigma together. And it's one of those programs where the host is just going to tell you straight up, I don't know the answers. This is a journey. It's a campaign. Hashtag ending the stigma together, you know. Things are coming into my life. Things are coming into my purview that for the most part were not exactly planned. I wasn't seeking out certain things. And my two guests today, I just met recently, and we're going to get into that conversation shortly. But what I would say to you is, I just connected with this organization through the Queens Chamber of Commerce on a Zoom meeting probably about 9 days ago. And I met a gentleman there named George Morpho, and that was like noon that afternoon, and 3 hours later we were at a Zoom meeting talking about this upcoming event, which spun right into my friends visiting with me right here on the show. And we're going to get into it. The name of the organization, Housing Solutions of New York. Maria is here, Juliana is here. I'm going to have you each introduce yourselves, and we're going to have a great conversation. And together we're going to talk about different things about ending the stigma around mental health, the stigma around serious mental illness. Certainly, as we were talking just in the break room a little while ago, the stigma of folks who are experiencing homelessness and experiencing food insecurity and neurodiversity. I mean, gosh, we were hanging out for a little while and we hit so many topics already, you know. I think maybe I should start recording before the show starts from now on. That might be a good thing. So, Maria, why don't you start us off introducing yourself, and then we'll introduce Juliana, and then we'll dive in. How's that sound?
Well, that's fine. My name is Maria Races. I'm the program manager of BRY, which is Building Resilience in Youth. This program is under the Housing Solutions Network, Housing Solutions of New York network. So we work with young people from 13 to 21, just again, like we were talking about mental health and learning coping skills. So that's my introduction, and this is Juliana.
So Juliana, how are you connected to this whole thing here?
So I'm Juliana. I'm a C2C care coordinator under the supervision of Maria Races. And basically I do a lot of outreach within the Bronx community and educate our teens about stress management skills, coping skills under Connections to Care, bringing resilience in youth, and use a manual kind of that's given to us to guide us, to help guide the teens on how to use these skills on a day-to-day in their toolboxes.
How, you know, life is challenging. Excuse me. Life is challenging on its surface, you know. Then you take into other situations and challenges, I think, that some people are all too familiar with, and some people have no context of. You know, I've never been homeless. I've never been food insecure. I don't know that paradigm, right? And other people only know that paradigm, right? So when it comes to children, and even if we think in terms of children in school, and there's an organization I do some work with here on Long Island, and they make sure that children go home with a backpack of food on the weekends, because these are children who are food insecure, who wouldn't eat on the weekends, wouldn't have access to food. These are children who experience things that other people don't experience. It's going to school hungry, right? These are things that people live with each and every day. I want to ask you, Juliana, from the perspective of talking about behavior skills and coping and things like that for young people, some of that, what does that look like in the day-to-day when you're doing this type of work?
Well, we're in a couple of schools, and we do come across homeless youth, and we come across with what you're talking about, like food insecurities, housing insecurities, and all of these necessities that we as humans need, and they're struggling getting as teens. And we try to literally outsource as much as we can, right? Within our company, we actually also have a food pantry.
Okay.
So we always, when we're doing intakes and we're having these discussions on one-on-one with our teens, we tell them about these different pantries, how they can get these free services, these free resources. And you know, one of my favorite things about our pantry that we have at Housing Solutions of New York in the Bronx is that it's appointment-based.
Okay.
So it takes away that stigma of that shame right? Where I'm standing in a line and everybody's looking at me while I'm trying to get my food because I don't have, like, they don't have to worry about things
I
like
love
that,
that.
right? And it's, again, helping the community out, helping our teens out, and really giving that resource out. We also have other networks that we use to try and, like, use whatever resources that network has to be able to provide that for our teens, so that our teens could be like, all right, we can go here together, we can talk this way, and, you know, kind of guide them through it, so that they don't feel alone through the process. And I feel like that's the job of a care coordinator,
Yes.
right? Walking alongside them, basically saying, all right, you can do it. I believe in you. Here's how.
Right. So helping navigate, providing support, right? Especially
Empowering them.
empowering, right? So at some point, you know, they might need support for 100% of an effort or to get access to a resource, and then they know how to access that resource themselves later on down the road. I want to ask you just that, or I want to point out, there's an organization at Nassau Community College called Nest, which is a food pantry right here on Long Island, and they refer to the individuals as guests. And sometimes those guests are students, often. Sometimes those guests are, while I was there was some, I was visiting recently, and some of the guests, there was a security officer from the school. So by the grace of God, who knows what someone else is going through? But you had something to add to that,
No,
please.
I
Marie.
was just, because you mentioned not knowing about being homeless. There's so much involved in being homeless. There's so much need in being homeless. I mean, think of us as we as adults struggling day by day, and we may have a home, we may have a bed, but it's not just food and shelter, it's mental health. It's just having the empathy where they don't want to be there.
Of course not.
And that's the only, and then people.
No one made
there's
this choice.
Yeah,
No one
there's
decided.
a stigma like, they're just lazy. This is what they want to be, you know? Why should we help them? It's not, we don't know what led them to be homeless, what led them to bring their family into the shelter. I mean, Housing Solutions has shelters in each borough. So we also, besides the schools, we also work in the shelters. And if you meet them every day, you could see that they really want to help, but they're also struggling with their mental health.
Sure.
So you're talking about a person who may have grew up in a home and maybe had a normal childhood. I mean, we can never know what really normal is,
Right,
like who
right.
describes what normal is. And then all of a sudden, something triggered, a trauma may have triggered them, where they had no resource to go to say, this is how you could handle it. And so growing up, it just stays in them, and then it just becomes something bigger where they can't handle, and then they can't find a job, they can't find, you know, something stable. They'll get themselves, I don't want to say drugs or anything like that, but they'll get themselves involved with their mental health is not taken care of,
Sure.
which will lead them to being homeless.
Yeah.
Substance use.
There's so
Substance, sure.
much involved in
Yeah.
homeless that you say homeless and people are thinking, oh, the person in the streets.
Well, see, that's the challenge. I think this is where you're going to. Like, that's I don't know another way to say it, but just the rudeness and not
Yeah.
and lack of compassion for another human being. Like, no one decided that was where they wanted. That was not aspirational. There was something, some mechanism that happened, whether it be a health issue, a mental health issue. To your point, you know, sometimes it's somebody lost their job. I mean, so many, especially you hate the word I was going to. Yeah. Trauma.
We were talking
Trauma is
about
so
Yeah,
much-
let's
earlier
take it
and
away,
how
please. Go ahead.
We were talking about it earlier,
Yeah.
as you were saying in the break room,
Yeah.
and you brought it up, and it was a beautiful way that you brought it up, right? Because you spoke. I personally feel like you spoke in a compassionate way. A lot of the times we don't know people's histories, and it's a lot of it stems from trauma, childhood adversities, all of these things that happen, and then they're stuck as teens or stuck even as adults in those traumatic ways, and they don't know how to navigate or lead the way, go towards, right? And that's why I feel like it's very important to always talk about mental health, because that's the way to help a lot of our communities, help a lot of our people.
Yeah.
And there's so much need now with the climate that we have for that mental health. And our program is 13 to 21, so that,
Especially after COVID, I would
Right.
like to add.
yeah, especially after COVID, 13 to 21 is such a vital stage because they're not children, they're not adults.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you were saying 25 is when our brain
our
is,
brains,
right?
we all have a dormant schizophrenia dormant in our brains. And at 25 is when our minds are fully developed. anything could trigger that schizophrenia, or anything could trigger our mental health. We may think we're fine, and some trauma may come in and something triggers. So our program really just tries to focus on the young people to learn how to cope with their stress and say, I'm not okay.
It's okay that I'm not okay.
Right. That's our little flyer. We have
I
in
know,
some
we'll
of our
talk about it
flyers.
a lot,
It's okay to say, because now it's like, oh, I'm therapy, but I'm not crazy. You don't have to be crazy.
No.
You just have to. We all need that extra help.
We all
And
need
that's
it. So, second episode ever of my show, Philanthropy in Focus, which we got to feature housing solutions on my show. So,
Nice.
so I've done 200, and this morning, I guess, 202 episodes of Philanthropy in Focus. And the second episode, which is like 4 years ago, was my friend Dr. Larry Grubler, who's the CEO of TSINY, Transitional Services for New York. And that organization serves 5,000 individuals in the 5 boroughs with serious and persistent mental health challenges or mental health issues. And Larry said to me on that show, and I'll never forget it forever, and he said, Tommy, we all need support at different times. And I just think if that, as a race of human beings, if we can just, if that, I joked with you earlier, I said, I'm only going to do the show until we end the stigma, right? So obviously, I'm probably going to be doing the show for a long time, and somebody else will take the show after there's no more Tommy D, right? But it's that level of, we must support each other. We must engage with people. And you talk about trauma, and I have this friend who I'm going to introduce you to. In fact, I texted her while we were inside because I want to get a meeting. She runs an organization outside of Philadelphia called Siloam Wellness that works with people living with HIV and AIDS, and they have all these different wellness programs. And her name is Serena DiBianca, and Serena and I speak every Friday morning. And she and I have really been keyed in on this piece of trauma, this focus about this word trauma and what that means, because I believe it's all relative. We all have it. Your trauma, my trauma, different, but we all have stuff. There's things we have, and there's a quote
Different
by
capacities.
Say that again.
At different capacities.
Different capacities. There's a quote by Robin Williams where he says, the quote, everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind always. And I've heard this thing where, like, if we all had a big long table and we could take all our stuff, all our trauma, everybody would take their own stuff and walk away with it, because everybody would realize, wow, maybe my stuff isn't so bad because everyone's dealing with it. And I like that visual of just seeing what people, that would go, oh, it's not just me, it's everybody. And that's how I think we get to love. And that's how I think we get to compassion. And it's like, how you doing? How are you? Like, that's where we need to start. It should start there everywhere.
I try to remember to say before I speak to anyone, are we okay before I start my ramble? Because I want to make sure you're okay
100%.
to listen to my ramble.
She does that. I love that.
You love that. Why is that, as somebody who, that's your boss, right? So, like, when you do that in meetings, like staff meetings, why is that important from your perspective?
It's a mental health checkup, right? Like, where are you in your headspace? Are you going to be able to take in the information, or are you going to completely block me out? And I love that she does that, because I actually do that as well. Where I'm
you learn that and you pay that forward, or?
I actually learned that some time ago with friends. So with friends, I actually tend to go, do you have time for my SHIT?
Yeah, here it comes, right?
Right? If you don't, it's okay.
You think if you spell it, nobody knew what you were saying?
No, I just don't know.
I'm wondering.
I don't know what the
we're not allowed to say the word, but you can spell the word. That's it. That was good, right? We didn't plan that. That's funny.
Sorry.
No, I loved it. That was great. I love it. But that's like.
And it's important for me.
How selfless of you to because many of us will just dump our stuff on other people, but you're like, look, I'm dealing with something. Can you handle this right now? Like, and I know that in my own, between my wife and I, like, sometimes it's, and I can tend to be sensitive. So many people who plug into my stuff and the content know I got the ADHD. With that comes a little bit of sensitivity sometimes. And maybe I'm this 47-year-old man, but sometimes I can be a bit of a little baby, and I get my feelings hurt. And I say that because we need to do those check-ins with each other and just be like, can you handle this right now? Can you manage it? Especially in a business setting, though, and like you were talking about, like, especially if you're going to be speaking to your people. You have a message to get across, right? are they prepared to receive that message, good and or bad, but can they manage it? What were you going to add to
I
that?
was going to say, so imagine us as adults that we all have our thing, we're having this conversation, and someone who doesn't have that person to say, can you hear me out? And they're struggling.
They don't
just to
have
go
they,
into
they
the
don't have
shelter.
someone to go to.
They don't know that person they have to give their life story to. They don't know if that person is going to judge them. And so imagine a teenager or preteen watching their parents struggle and saying, you know, I have to find us a place. And they have to talk to this total stranger and be so vulnerable
Of
because
course,
they need a roof
completely
over their head.
vulnerable, right?
So there's so much stigma, but there's so much resources. But because there's a stigma to homeless, there's a stigma to mental health, there's a stigma to food insecurities, you don't know how to look for these resources.
And even culture plays a part in,
Yeah,
in
sure.
it,
Culture
right?
definitely
Because
plays a part.
Tell me about
as,
that.
as a Hispanic and Latina myself,
Yeah.
right? One of the main things is what happens in these four walls.
Keep it here. This is our
stays-
business.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's nobody else's business.
Yeah.
So having some of these teams really tell me ours, I always say thank you to my teams after they
Thank you
speak
for
to
sharing.
me. Yeah, because at the end of the day, they didn't have to. That's
Mm-hmm.
one. And two, I know that some of them feel culturally like, well, they feel like they express at times that they feel like they're backstabbing, right?
The
Their
family.
home.
So they're going against the family?
Because they're trying to look for a resource, right? It's kind of like
So what is that? So just if we take a step back and think, what does it take for that young person to reach out for help when they've grown up in a family system that says we don't go outside and ask for help? That is a stretch. So I think your point about being grateful and appreciative for them opening up is an incredible way for them to experience that, because it took so much for them to come to that place and ask for help. And I think that's what we need to do, is reduce the friction when people need services, as best we can, to embrace and come from a place of service, right? And like I said earlier with that organization, and I know several organizations that have pantries and soup kitchens, and they refer to the individuals as guests, because any one of us could be in these situations at any time.
We refer to our young person, our young people.
Yeah.
That's how we refer them to.
Mm-hmm.
We also do try to include the families, and you'd be surprised how many families where we will have because we need the consent of their minors.
Mm-hmm.
So we do this assessment stuff. We always tell them, listen, you don't have to answer whatever you don't want to answer, whatever you're comfortable with. And then you have a parent wanting to know our program. And then you'll have a parent say, do you have any resources for me? So there is such a need in these shelters to have that. Yes, they need a bed. Yes, they need food. Yes, they need a roof over their head. But they also need that mental health therapy, that somebody that they could talk to because they're struggling, that they're bringing all this, trauma with them, because being in a shelter alone is very traumatic. And we never know what tomorrow is going to bring.
No.
Any one of us could end up in a shelter.
100%.
And
Yeah.
so it's not prejudice to anyone.
No, it isn't. And I guess, I think in terms of, I think with my own children, and they've gone out and done a lot of nonprofit work with me. Tomorrow we're doing an event with the Rotary, packing meals and things like that. And my kids get to see this, and it's good. But I think you still forget. And my children really, and as much as I've exposed them to what goes on in the world, they don't know everything and how difficult and challenging
we get to
it is
be
for many people.
privileged.
And that's what it is. It's now, I'm not necessarily apologizing for having things, but I'm saying, without being reminded of what else somebody's going through, people just don't know. So I want to ask if we can get a little bit about the organization now, because when we were talking earlier, there's 5 different shelters. Is that?
Oh, we have, in the Bronx alone, I think there's about 7. We also have, we are starting a supportive housing. We have one in Queens, we have one in Brooklyn. I think we have a few in the Fire Boroughs.
Okay.
Housing Solutions of New York. And we have awesome case managers. If you could see them work, they give so much to these families. We have care coordinators.
Thank God or thank the universe, because if it's
they
not
don't get paid enough.
But that's a whole other.
That's another conversation.
Forget about it. Yeah.
But it really does take a toll on so many people. It's just like a domino effect.
Yeah.
So
Once a family becomes homeless, it's a domino
Sure.
effect.
Yeah.
It affects a lot of people.
Yep.
Just to say, we work in 9 of the shelters from the Bronx, in the Bronx area from Housing Solutions of New York. So Marie and myself are in those different shelters.
That's
but
where
there
you're
are
bringing
more,
the programming.
Yeah.
That's where you bring. So
But there are more. Our program does expand to the 5 boroughs. We're just given the
Bronx.
the Bronx.
certain sectors.
Got it. So I want to talk about this upcoming event, which, like I say, life has a way of just happening, right? And I didn't know I was going to be on a meeting with George that day, and him and I are doing like the chat in the Zoom meeting, and I'm like, dude, we should connect. He goes, absolutely. I said, here's my my calendar link, and that afternoon, 90 minutes later, I met with you and Delia,
Yes.
and right,
Liliana.
and George, and then I said, like, that was only a 20-minute meeting, and by minute like 17, I was like, why don't you guys just come on my show and we'll talk about this? Like, that's how it happens, and that's how fast it can be. This event is coming up, so I want to make sure we talk about it. So this is the event. I'll hold up the flyer so folks can see it, and then I'll hold it up.
It's a youth summit for basically it's okay not to be okay. It's for it's to bring awareness of mental health to young people. Bring some resources where they may not realize there's resources available. So we're going to have a tabling of our BRY, because BRY, Building Resilience in Youth, this program is in a couple of other boroughs, so it's not just the Bronx. We're going to have the LGBTQ community, Destinations Tomorrow,
Okay.
which is services LGBTQ community, because they struggle with their mental health, and you'll find them in the population in the shelter struggling there also. So we're trying to bring the resources to the population that needs it, and at the same time have some fun, connect with people around you. We're going to have some music. We'll have maybe 1 or 2 vendors, some tabling, some resources, a meditation. Somebody's going to speak on how to breathe and how to cope. We're going to have an art table, because art's very therapeutic.
Yes.
We're going to even have a fidget table. Fidget's very therapeutic.
A whole table full of fidgets?
Fidgets.
Oh
it's
my
going to drive
God.
anybody with ADHD.
Fidgets
are
and
the thing.
stickers.
You like stickers?
I'm a sticker person and a fidget person.
Really?
Keep your hands busy.
Positive
because
affirmation
even,
stickers.
Even
All right,
if,
good to know. I'll write it
yeah,
down.
even if the
I'll get you
person
some.
is not like looking in your face and they're playing with something, but if you keep speaking to them, they'll have a conversation with you.
Sure.
Something's getting in.
Sure.
So I totally would have on my table when I speak to young people, clay, fidgets, stickers, and candy.
Play therapy.
because
I like play therapy. Let me tell you.
So it's like, talk to me. So we're going to have great food, music. Let's see, great food, music. Yeah, it's an event that everyone, family and teenagers, are invited to in the Bronx. The
Talk
location.
about the raffle
Oh, we have
prizes.
raffle prices. We're going to have an iPad, headphones. You can see my age. I made sure that it's compatible to Androids and Apple.
Why do you mean you can see your age? It's not like you weren't
I
given.
thought headphones were like the headphones, like the way we used to listen.
Yeah.
But now there's so many different headphones.
But I thought
It
you
could
were
be
saying, when you said that, I thought you were going to like raffle off like a Walkman. You see your age.
No,
Like, what are you talking
that's,
about? What?
listen, that would be a great
Don't go-
idea. It would be a.
You got to find some cassette tapes and
I said, what is that? The little thing that held all the music.
like they used like an iPod.
I said iPod.
You were going to
Like,
raffle off an iPod?
I said
we
we
were going to go on a
we could
time
use it
machine.
to
I don't think
iPod
everyone.
to put our speakers. I know. So we have 2 movie tickets with a meal packet. We're going to have a $100 gift card. We're going to have the iPad and headphones that are compatible to Apple and Androids. We have a little art contest going on. Where anybody could-
When is this? Next, it's the
This is March
28th.
28th on
March
Friday
28th.
from 6 to 9:30.
6:30 to
We're going to have one young person bring in a poem about mental health and how it affects you, or any art drawing that just relates to it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Because we wanted them to come in and say it's okay to
It's
say
okay.
you need.
Listen, it's
need help.
okay not to be okay. We have to, it's like maybe if a guy
And
came up with
it's-
a T-shirt that said hashtag ending the stigma together. I love to say the word hashtag because I think it's funny. I think it's a funny word. It's just like, and I like literally the other day I was like saying it or typing it somewhere and I must have said it out loud, and it wrote out the word hashtag, and I was like, that's not what I meant, man. I meant the pound sign. Remember the pound sign?
Yeah.
You know the pound sign? I don't know. You remember?
I do.
All right.
But yeah, it's going to be a great event for families and teenagers to come to get together, grab some resources, have some food, listen to some music, and maybe take something home out of it. Maybe out of maybe 100 people, one person be like, I am not okay.
And you know what? I mean,
It's okay.
it is
it's
okay.
okay.
And not to be overly dramatic, but you're saving lives. Like often this could be literally saving somebody's life, because if somebody's not okay, now they know it's okay that they're feeling, and there's going to be resources there that they can reach into and have access to now as a result of going to this event. So
And I'm going to put out in the air that it's going to be a bunch of people, so they're going to go and say, wait a minute, there's so many people here. There's so many people into this. I'm not the only one.
I'm not the only one.
Right.
That's what we need to know, is it's not just me, man.
One fun event.
Yeah.
I did order Uno cards for each table.
Okay.
And little roll dices that say little conversation piece, because I want everyone to be able to speak to each other. You don't know who you meet.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know, like you'll sit at events and you just sit there, you don't know who the person that's sitting next to you. Play a game of Uno, you'd be surprised how you get to know people.
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, we'll have
My
Uno
son is really good at that game. I'm not very good at
I
Uno.
cheat.
But you cheat.
I definitely
Oh,
cheat.
that's good. You know that we're recording this, right? so anybody who's going to play Uno
Actually,
with
they
you
all
is
know
going to
I
know
do.
They're
you're.
gonna be like,
you
you're not playing with
But
them.
you cheat at Uno?
Yes.
Oh my God. So my son has this one where, like, for some reason there's these cards that you can write like extra.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh come on, but it's nonsense.
Have you played Attack?
No, what's that?
Oh,
It's a whole
it's
nother. It's another.
amazing.
All right, you have to teach me. This is nonsense though, because he writes on there like, take 25 cards. Come
that's
on, dude.
mean.
What are we gonna do then? Don't listen. You just told me you cheat. I don't want to hear. Now you calling my kid mean? Really?
Well, I'm not playing with your kid because he
I'm not letting one. I'm not playing with either of you
because I
two.
cheat, I may win.
I'm not playing with you, and I'm not playing with him no more. That's the end of that. We're running out of time, and I always ask my guests this final important question, and I want you both to answer it. We'll ask you first, Juliana. From your perspective, as it relates to mental health and mental illness, how do we end the stigma?
Community.
Community. Community. What do you mean?
A lot of the time the resources are there, but people don't know because they don't know somebody that knows about that resource. So if we can create more communities and we can create more togetherness, just that would be a way to a step closer
Yeah.
of ending that stigma.
Community.
To tell each other it's okay.
It's
to
okay.
not be okay.
It's okay not to be okay, and there's resources. There are resources there, gang. I've said on the show before, 988-988. If you got this far in the program, you need help. 988. Maria, same question. How do we, through your lens, through what you see, through your experience, how do we end the stigma?
Building resilience in each other, the education with empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, we educate, but we also have to have some empathy, have some understanding. Make it fun, make it be like it's okay. Like just educating families, parents, anyone around you.
Yeah, this has been incredible. I really appreciate both being here. We're going to make sure to get the word out on the event. I want you to feel like you can come back anytime. We'll do the show. I plan on doing 100,000 episodes of this show.
Listen, call us. We could talk about this
love
for
it.
hours.
I mean, I'd love when we come up to the Bronx. If I can get up there, on the 28th, I want to do my best to get there as well. And
Bring your kids.
yeah. And any way I can help educate people and help spread the awareness and make more connections it's what this is about. It's why, this came to me one day. The story behind this, really quick, is every so often I do these panel discussions where I bring leaders of nonprofit organizations to come on a panel, and I ask them questions. And a friend of mine who was the first guest on the show, her name is Jamie Rosen. She's a mental health attorney. She said, "Hey, I saw you do that panel. I'm on the committee for mental health for the Nassau County Bar Association. Would you come and do that again?" I said, "Of course." I thought about it. I said, "But how do I elevate it?" So I had T-shirts made up, and I gave all my panelists T-shirts, and I gave Jamie Rosen got a T-shirt, and then I was like, "There's more here. What do we do next?" And that's how we get here today. That's how we're sitting here today. And this is just a thing. I don't think I'll actually do 100,000 episodes. That sounds like an awful lot, but I'm going to do this all the time. And see, you bring perspective through your lens, Juliana. You bring perspective through your lens, and I bring a different perspective, and that's what we all are. And the more we have this dialogue, and if it opens up and turns into an event where we have 60 people, at one point we'll have 60 people who were guests on this show talking about this and breaking it up and figuring out what to do. So I appreciate you both. I will do my best to be at the event, but we're certainly going to promote it. I'll put it on social media. We're going to be here on North Shore TV. We're going to leave it there. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for
Thank you
having
so
us.
much.
I'm excited.
This
I'm
was a
excited.
joy.
I love
Ending
it.
the
Thank you.
stigma.
Ending the stigma.
Stigma.
hashtag, I love that word, hashtag ending the stigma together, your boy, the nonprofit sector connector. And as I tell you every week, don't have the answers. Got some questions, and I have some really cool friends who are going to come on and help me have this discussion and this conversation. I appreciate you. Make it a great day. This has been another In Focus production. See you later. Bye.